It's a nice jacket. It's a nice little combination you put together there, man. That's very summery.
Thank you.
Very vacation-like. Maybe a member of the Miami Heat can borrow it. You know, because they're headed for vacation. Tonight is about to be a very sad night, unless you're a Denver Nuggets fan or a member of the Denver Nuggets, that is. But for the rest of us, it's going to be a sad night because tonight's about to mark the end of the 2022-2023 NBA season. And hello off-season, if there is such a thing. Look, nobody doubts the Miami Heat's competitiveness, all right? They're here for a reason. Nobody doubts whether the Heat are a good team. And we know it's been done before, once before, but done before nonetheless. A team has come back from a 3-1 deficit. We know that anything could happen. As I've said, it's not a series as much as it is a sequence of stories, individual stories. Every game is its own story.
That's right.
And we know that the Celtics just beat the Heat 3 straight times and look to be on the verge of history. And Spoelstra, we saw him say that after Game 6 against Boston. You know, we can't wait we wish you could play tomorrow. We're going to get this done. All that sounds fine and dandy. It all sounds good. But they ain't got nothing for Denver, man. We saw it during Game 1.
Right.
Denver let up in Game 2. This should have been a sweep. It's going to be a gentleman's sweep after tonight. I mean, like Miami, if you were going to beat Denver when Denver's locked in and focused, it was going to be when Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic were shooting a combined 13 or 36. If you were going to make your move, it was when Jokic was on a bench in foul trouble in Game 4. And yet, my main man Bruce Brown, my main man Bruce Brown and Aaron Gordon and KCP and those guys picking up the slack. It's just, Michael Malone said that the hardest game is the closeout game. And typically that's true. I don't think it's going to be that hard for Denver because I don't really think this series, in retrospect, in hindsight, is all that close. They're just better. And I don't think Denver makes the same mistake twice. If there were ever all Michael Malone has to say is look at Game 2. We messed around and let them feel like they can get in this series in Game 2, and they stole Game 2 on our home court. We went and dominated them in the 305 that Eric Spoelstra wants to get back to. Let's close this thing out. Let's have a party. Let's give our fans, this franchise, the championship it has long coveted and long waited for. I just don't see Miami so much as getting a game, another game, let alone making history. Like it ends tonight.
You're so right. Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. Look, Eric Spoelstra, I think we both agree Eric Spoelstra is going to be, when his career is over, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He is a Hall of Fame basketball coach. And whenever he stops coaching basketball, he'll be a Hall of Fame life coach. Because he's got, I'm telling you, man, he's got all the phrases down. You will improve your credit. You will be the best version of yourself. You will eliminate bad habits. It will start today. I mean, he's so convincing. Be like, yeah, man, that's right.
Yeah, they can do this.
That's right. I'm going to
do this.
You go get
right.
Listen, you're not going to back down. You're going to ask her to go out with you. She will say yes. And you will have the rest of your life. He's like, he does that thing with his hands too. He's like, oh, there it is. There it is right there. Okay, look, that worked. That little thing worked on teams that didn't have what Denver has. And maybe the Celtics have the roster that Denver has, but the Celtics don't have the resolve. They probably were outside the door kind of listening to Eric Spoelstra say that stuff and saying, oh, is he right? They were too weak-minded to just look at that and say, those are some nice words. It's very poetic. I know that comes from the Pat Riley school of convincing people that they're more than their individual selves. They're part of some brotherhood and all that stuff. Great. The Miami Heat have not figured out a way, Mike, to deal with Jokic, one. They have not dealt with Jokic all series. They really haven't. Even the game where he scores 40 and Eric Spoelstra starts lecturing people about their untrained basketball minds, like, oh, we ain't let him score 40 and limited his assists. Denver didn't play well, and Michael Malone called them out. what they've done, I think Denver has responded to Michael Malone, his call. He called them out. They haven't been the same since.
Yeah.
And Miami has reached the end of it. This is it. There's no more land out there. That's just South Beach. That's just water. There's no more land. You got nowhere else to go. And now they finally met someone who's as mentally strong as they are and more talented. And that's why it's over. And props to Denver, by the way. Props to Denver because our East Coast bias, I don't know if you admit that you have it, I have it. My East Coast bias kind of prevented me from giving them full credit. I gave them credit because I was supposed to. I was supposed to give them credit. But I didn't give them the full credit that they deserved as the number one seed pretty much from the time the season started to now. And they're playing like it. And they're showing everybody why all the hype is there for the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, no, I don't feel like I was guilty of that. I mean, if you call buying into the idea of the West being wide open, yeah, sure, okay. I didn't have the Nuggets over the field in the Western Conference, but I've been banging this Jokic drum for a few years now, so
right.
No, right. I'm not shocked about them being here. They're finally healthy and they're finally clicking. I think the story, if we could just get ahead of ourselves since we've already written the Heat's obituary, I'll get back to them in a second, but the story is that this isn't a one-off for Denver. This isn't Denver just catching lightning in a bottle. This was the next step in their progression and their ascension to a dominant team. Now, I'm not going to use the other D word yet because it takes more than one championship, which technically they still have not won, to get into that conversation. And I'm not going to disrespect the previous iterations of that D word by talking about Denver's potential to be one of those. I think you know what I'm talking about here. But having said that, it really does look like Denver is here to stay because the other person that they haven't had an answer for is Jamal Murray. When you think you have an answer for slowing him down as a scorer, which he did in Game 4, he goes out and looks like Magic Murray with 12 assists and no turnovers. And now what's scary for the Heat in Game 5, in what we believe to be the closeout Game 5, what's scary for the Western Conference for the next several years as well as the rest of the league is that Denver has two superstars. And they didn't do it the new school way of who could we trade for, who could we sign. These guys have grown up, they've been through some fires, they've been battle tested, they've had some setbacks, they've had some heartbreaks, and here they are. As I said at the top of this series, they got the big and little joker. And for those of you who play spades, you got the big and little joker, you probably gonna win more hands than you lose.
That's right. And I do play spades, and I'm great at it. But anyway, we know. I know I'm lying. But it is.
But am I lying? I mean, am I lying?
No,
I think Denver is going to be around for a while, especially when you look at the rest of the landscape of the Western Conference. Yeah, this is the beginning for them.
We talked about this. What was it? Last Thursday, with Liv Moods, who, by the way, is going to be always a must follow. But tonight, she go act a fool tonight. Okay. Yeah. So follow Liv Moods, the number one Denver Nuggets observer in this here land. But it was a quote from Michael Malone. They were asking him about Murray and Jokic and their connection. And he said, this is after they won Game 4. He said, this has been 7 years in the making. And so think about that. Nobody talks like that anymore, Mike. 7 years. And I made the point to Liv. Here in Boston, they're talking about, we've seen enough. We've seen enough of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. It's time to break them up. Yeah, 7 years. Right, but think about it. But that's most people. At 7 years, this is their first trip to the NBA Finals. It's not like they've been to the Finals and lost. They hadn't even made it to the NBA Finals. So most NBA fans, most NBA governors are not that patient. And so
they're not.
They're going to get the benefit of it. But
most people.
Now, But the last thing I'll say on this, just real quick, and then I'll toss it to you. That whole dynasty thing, that's a different conversation for a different day and maybe a different
100%.
era. Because once this new CBA kicks in, you're not going to be able to keep all these guys like you have on the roster right now.
For sure.
The law, the government says you're not allowed to do it. So it's going to be tough.
Well, what else I'll say on your point about Denver in this, 7-year journey to this point. And, I'm like Benny the Butcher. I think this is year 3 in the beginning of a 10-year run for them. It's like, I'm thinking, like, did it work? Did it help? So the very thing that led them to be that boy, he cold with them bars.
He is. He really ridiculous.
The very thing that led to Denver being disrespected and underrated and underappreciated may have also allowed them to kind of take the long road. Because like if they were under the white hot spotlight that most teams are that have a 2-time MVP or that have a great player or 2 great players. I know Murray's been hurt or what have you, or that had the type of bubble that they had. They weren't subjected to the scrutiny is what I'm getting at. The same level of scrutiny that would foster the impatience that you're talking about. That other teams where it's like if it doesn't work in 2-3 years, all right, we got to hit reset. We got to blow it up. They were able to, because they sort of relatively speaking, flew under the radar. We're able to kind of go through these tests and these trials and these tribulations to get to this point. But, I mean, listen, the big news today is that Tyler Hero, he's listed as questionable, but he could play for the first time since Game 1 against Milwaukee. I don't know what you could expect from him. I don't know if even playing him meaningful minutes is the right thing given how your rotation has come together, but you got to play him if he's available. If nothing else, maybe it gives you a spark. Maybe get hit some of the threes that Miami isn't hitting, because I'm trying to find the way for Miami to extend this series and to render this conversation that we're having right now, Michael, as moot and premature. But, like, Denver's back to hitting their threes, which they did all season. We talked about the Jokic-Murray combination. Miami, conversely, is not hitting its threes. Denver's also shutting off the wide open threes. I don't know that Tyler Hero coming back is going to make that much of a difference enough for Miami to get this back to the 305. I don't think we're being and I hate doing this to Miami, but honestly, I think even coming into this finals, a lot of the prognostication about this being a long competitive series, to me, believe it or not, Michael, and follow what I'm saying and tell me if you agree, had less to do with disrespect for Denver and more to do with respect for Miami as not just an 8 seed, but heat culture. Heat culture convinced us that Miami could hang with Denver, more so than a lack of respect for Denver, thinking that they were some kind of fluke and didn't really belong here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's no question. It did. I mean, we talked about it. It was heat culture plus recent receipts. We just kind of ignored the regular season. Regular season, that was the anomaly, and we looked at the reality of taking down the top 2 seeds. Remember, the two best teams in the NBA in terms of record. They beat them both, and they beat them both convincingly, even though one of them went to a Game 7, but they were up 3-0 on one of those teams, and then they, 3 losses. Then they blew them out in Game 7, and then they took care of Milwaukee in 5. Those are the 2 best teams in the NBA. So heat culture plus what they had done in the postseason. But I'm going to tell you, man, it was a bad week. It was a bad week in Miami. Eric Spoelstra said he wants to go back. No. They should play the next one. Play the next one like in Georgia or Alabama or somebody else. Play it like in the Bahamas. Because when they went back to Miami, think about all the things that they had, all the momentum that they had, and all the things that Denver did to them in Miami. So they go back to Miami. Series is tied at 1. You're feeling pretty good about it. Okay, here we go. Game 3, Denver made 5 3-pointers. They made 5 3-pointers for the game, and they won it in 2023. And then in Game 4, Jokic, by the way, that 5th foul was a joke. Don't get me started on these NBA officials. The 5th foul on Jokic, 9 minutes to play, he's got to go to the court. Bam flopped. That's not good. Heat culture. We don't do that here. That's heat culture. He flops, get the 5th foul on Jokic. They go to the bench. Jamal Murray is 5 for 17. Jokic out of the game. And then my boy, I've been trying to tell you about him. Boston, stand up. Dorchester, stand up. I've been trying to tell you about Bruce Brown, bruh. I mean, man,
you've been telling me about him for years. You've been telling me about Bruce Brown for years.
And I tried to tell you about
You've been on Bruce Brown since Brooklyn, right? Well, matter of fact, Michael,
Yeah, that's right.
you've been on Bruce Brown since Detroit.
Yeah.
You've been down with Bruce Brown since Detroit, right? Am I right?
That's right.
Right? And then in
right.
Brooklyn, you saw it. You saw his potential in Brooklyn. So that was no surprise. His 11 points in the fourth quarter of Game 4. No surprise to you. No surprise to you.
Everybody knows. I'm lying. Michael Smith.
The five people
Bruce Brown.
who watch this show and have continued to watch this show since Bruce Brown was a thing, they get that inside joke. they get that inside joke right there.
I appreciate y'all. So look, they had their moment. They missed it. They missed their shot. Miami Heat missed their shot in Miami. If they had even gotten a split, we'd be having a different conversation. Get a split, go back. But I think Denver overcame. Denver did a Miami in Miami. They overcame some adversity and found a way to win anyway. Now they're going back to Denver, and they're going to wrap this thing up tonight.
We're so sure about this. We're so sure about this.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Listen.
I'm saying just because we said all of this, here comes Jimmy Butler with one of those Jimmy Butler hunched over, exhausted bubble games. You know,
he'll play well
to get this series to unnecessarily extend this series, get it back to the 305. Not that that's mattered for Miami lately, but just because that's how it works. It's because you're sure of something, the opposite happens, especially to us.
It's over.
Egg just finds our faces. We love the taste of our own words here, brother from another, or our feet, as the case may be.
Is
Vince Carter over?
It's over.
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.